Namaskar. Very warm welcome to all our viewers and learners in this live phone-in session of CIT NCERT. I am Renu Bhatt with you all, and you are watching us live on eVidya channel, channel number 5. And apart from this channel, you are with us on our YouTube channel as well, that is ncertofficial Official. Dear learner, in this particular session, we are going to learn a story that is for English students, for 5th standard students actually. And the title of the story is Robinson Crusoe. And you must be wondering who is Robinson Crusoe and why we are discussing him in this particular session. We have accompanied by our experts so that he can throw light on this particular topic. Let's meet him. You are Dr. Amit Ranjan. You are Assistant Professor from CIT NCERT Delhi. Very warm welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And before we begin this particular session, let me share some certain information to all our viewers and learners in case they have any query and they want to know more about Robinson Crusoe. You can reach out to us to our various mediums. You can call us on our telephone number, that is 8800-440-559. Either you can drop a mail at our email address, that is dth.class5th@cit.nic.in. And apart from these mediums, you can reach out to us through our YouTube channel. You have to go to the live chat box and then you can drop your comment out there. And before we begin this particular session, let me share a very important piece of information with you all regarding India's G20 presidency. We are indeed very proud that India assumed G20 presidency and will convene the G20 Leaders Summit for the first time in the country in 2023. A nation that deeply committed to democracy and multilateralism, India's G20 presidency would be a watershed moment in her history as it seeks to play an important role by finding pragmatic global solutions for the well-being of all. And in doing so, manifest the true spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or we can say the whole world is one family. With that very important piece of information, let's quickly get back to the session in which we are going to learn about Robinson Crusoe. So, sir, over to you, and we are very eager to know who is Robinson Crusoe, sir.
Hello Renuji, and hello learners. This is a very special story. This is the oldest story in the entire syllabus of NCERT. This is 300-year-old story. This was written in 1719.
Okay.
And the whole title of the book, so we have a very small portion over here which is Robinson Crusoe discovers footprints, but the title of the book, so this is 3 pages from the book that we have, which is also adapted. The full title is Life and Strange Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe by a writer called Daniel Defoe. And like I said, this is one of the oldest novels and the oldest text that we have in the entire CBSE syllabus, NCERT syllabus from class 1 to class 12. So Robinson Crusoe is a tale of a man called Robinson Crusoe who is on a ship and his ship gets wrecked, everybody gets killed, and he is the only man alive, and he spends 27 long years on an island, and this is a diary, a journal he keeps for 27 years, and so this is all fictional, this is not a true story. However, there are many such true stories that were floating around at this point of time in the 18th century. So anything that happens between 1700 and 1800 is called 18th century. So there are many stories floating around this time. This story is of 1600s, of the 17th century. It's set in 1630s actually.
Okay.
So at this point of time there were lots of European explorers going out of Europe to explore the world. We'll come to that, how and why. This is very interesting because Europe was a very cold place and the resources were very scant, and they had heard that there are spices in the world. And spice trade was very big, and so they came to India eventually in search for spices also. So they built ships, wandered around the world and made various settlements everywhere, went for trade, went for colonization. Colonization means capturing, subjugating people of other places and establishing their rule. So the Europeans did this across the world. So what is now United States of America and Canada was inhabited by tribal people. What is now South America, which is Brazil, Argentina, was inhabited by tribal people. What is now Australia was also inhabited by aboriginal people. So half the world as we know today was inhabited by tribals, by aboriginals, and so all the white people living on these islands are actually all Europeans, and this all started in the 17th century or even earlier. We will come to that, but let us first look at this book. This is the original edition. This is how it was printed in 1719. As you can see, it says the life and strange surprising adventures of Robinson Crusoe of Torque, mariner, who lived 8 and 20 years all alone in an inhabited island. If you can look at it closely, the way island is written is how F is written now. So S was written like F is written now until very late. So if you read old books, you'll never find S. You'll always find an F, which was, and interestingly, phonetically, which means sound-wise, F and S are also closed. If you say first and first, for example. So, but the letter changed from what we now know as F was S. On the coast of America, near the mouth of the great river of Orinoco, etc., etc. And eventually he was saved by pirates. That is also written. So earlier there was a culture of writing long titles of books, like you're saying, and you can see in the illustration that there is this man on an island all alone with 2 guns in his hand, and at the bottom of the right hand side is 1719 written in Roman numerals, MDCCXIX. So you'll also learn Roman numerals later on in your classes, in probably class 7, I guess. And so this man was stranded on this island near America, what is now America, and he lost track of time. So to keep a track of time, he would write a diary, a journal every day, and he put up a cross like this you are seeing. And this picture is by George Cruikshank in the 1831 edition, 100 years later, in another reprint of the book. And so Robinson Crusoe plants this cross to mark the day on which he had landed on the island. All right. Now let us look at the story, and then we will later discuss the context around the story as well, and also we will see the specific part that you have in your textbook. So the story begins with a young man called Robinson Crusoe who ignores his family advice. They say don't go on a voyage, don't go on a ship because the oceans are wild and your ship will get drowned, and it usually happened. Many ships got wrecked, and there were also pirates on the ocean. Pirates are sea looters, thieves. You would have seen movies like Pirates of the Caribbean and others. So one of your tasks is to look up pirates in the dictionary and also to learn its spelling properly. It is P-I-R-A-T-E-S. So here Robinson Crusoe ignores his family's advice and goes on a voyage. All young men wanted to go out on the sea and explore the world and make money, because they would land on an island, they would trade, or they would capture people, things like that. But his ship is wrecked, as his father predicts. However, he somehow gets saved and returns. So this voyage to Guinea made him a sailor and a merchant. So Guinea is now known as Papua New Guinea, which is north of Australia, and so it's in between Asia and Australia. And that voyage, he says in the novel, made him a sailor and a merchant. After that, on a second voyage, he sails to Africa and is captured by the pirates, the sea thieves, and is sold as a slave. Now, who are slaves? Slaves are people who were captured by these sailors and taken as personal servants who were owned by them, who did not have a life of their own, who were literally owned by them. They were their property, so they had to do whatever they said. And this was very big for around 300 years. You would be surprised to know that various civilizations and places had slaves across the world. Especially slaves were taken from Africa to America in biggest numbers, and those people are the Afro-Americans of America today, who have given us all the good music that we know: rap, reggae, jazz, blues, as you will explore.
So rich people purchased them?
Rich people purchased them, the sailors captured them, and rich people purchased them to work on sugarcane plantations, coffee plantations, rubber plantations, because they needed labor in areas which were tropical. So students will also learn about tropical rainforests in geography and all the Caribbean islands and places that are humid. So here in India we have places like Kerala which have rubber plantations, coffee plantations, and these are very labor intensive. You need a lot of human labor, and so these people from Africa were bought as slaves and made to work. So it was free labor because they were not to be paid, they were owned. You paid a one-time fee. So this was a very bad draconian practice, and it's only about 100, 150 years ago that slavery as a practice was abolished in the world. Anyway, so he himself was captured as a slave. Robinson Crusoe was sold as a slave, and he ended up in Brazil. And your task, students, is to find out on the map where Brazil is. It's in South America, but get a map of South America and mark it there. And in Brazil, then he was sold as a slave, where he worked as a slave, and somehow he became a free man again. He struck a deal with the merchants over there because he was a smart man. He had already been a sailor and a merchant, so he knew how to sell his intelligence. So he somehow managed to become a free man again, and he made a deal with merchants to go to Guinea and buy slaves and return to Brazil. However, on the way to Guinea, they got stuck in the Caribbean. The Caribbean islands, if you watch cricket, are the islands from where the West Indian cricketers come. The team from West Indies comes from these islands. And you would be very interested to know that a huge Indian population from the states of what is now Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Tamil Nadu, people were taken not as slaves but as indentured labor to these islands around 1850. And indentured labor is not a slave, but they were paid very little, and they had a contract of working for a certain number of years, like 10 years, 15 years. And so the Caribbean islands have a lot of Indian population. So it is on one of these islands that the ship got wrecked and everybody died. Everybody died except Robinson Crusoe. So he was left all alone, stranded on this island without any human contact, and on this island he was there for 27 long years. And so this is a fascinating tale of how he survived, how he managed, and the most important of all, how could a man stay alone for 27 years. But this is a fictional account, but there are many stories, real stories, from which Daniel Defoe has drawn upon. We do not have the time to go into the details of those true stories, but these are based on some true stories. So these are the Caribbean islands, and this is one of your tasks, to take a map of the Caribbean islands and mark all the islands and learn all the islands that are there, and also to find out which islands have Indian population on them. Alright, so as you can see on the north of the map, on the top is Florida, which is part of United States, and on the south is South America. So what you are seeing over there is Guyana and Brazil and other countries, and so this is a very good exercise to learn which places Indians went to in the 1850s, to which islands they went to. So it's on one of these islands that Robinson Crusoe gets stranded. Stranded is to get stuck. So the ship was wrecked, but it was not destroyed. So he went inside the ship and gathered tools, axes, nails, there were guns also, and there was food for all the crew members. So he manages to survive with all the provisions on the island, but he doesn't know who's on the island, whether there are lions, tigers, wild animals. So and of course there is no human contact, nobody to talk to.
Right.
How do you keep track of time? Days pass, nights pass, there's no mobile phones and no gadgets. Anyway, we are talking about 1630s. So 27 long years Robinson Crusoe spends like that, and he carefully writes everything to remember, and what we have in the novel is what he wrote. So this is also fictional, this is also a story, but it is written in that form. It is written in the form of a diary entry. And also to understand that time is passing, he would mark every day as Monday, Tuesday, and cross them out.
Okay.
So every week, Monday to Sunday, and then mark everything out. So this is how a few years pass by, and one fine day he notices human footprint, and he's shocked because in all those years that he has been alone over there, he has never seen any human being. They're just small animals, and he has survived because there are no violent animals over there. But there's a human being, so there's a double sense of both fear because you don't know who it is, somebody could kill you. At the same time, he's very excited that there's somebody to talk to, somebody to meet, finally human contact. So this would, kids, remind you of the corona time when we were locked inside our houses and there were no friends to talk to. But this is much more dismal. He was all alone and without any thing either. He just had a journal in which to write. So he led a life of deep meditation and solitude. And one of the tasks also for students is to write a fictional account of how they would lead a life alone on an island if they were to live alone on an island like Robinson Crusoe. So then the story picks up, and what has actually happened is what Robinson Crusoe calls as savages. And so Europeans termed anybody who was outside their civilization as savages, those who did not follow their ways and customs, those who did not dress like them. So obviously lots of tribals did not wear clothes, or wore minimal clothes, did not follow religion the way European civilization followed. So all these people were called savages by Europeans. So Robinson Crusoe says that they are savages who brought captives with them, who had brought prisoners with them to sacrifice. So allegedly they had brought people for human sacrifice. Now this is very weird for the modern world to understand that human beings were sacrificed. Like people still sacrifice small animals like goats for religious purposes, but that human beings were also sacrificed at one point of time is something very difficult to understand for us. But they were. But also, there are many fancy tales, exaggerated tales, because these stories were sold in Europe. So the more exotic you made them, the more incredible you made them, unbelievable, people would buy it more, and which is why the book is still selling after 300 years.
Right.
So many of these things are also lies. We cannot take them at the face value that these tribal people actually indulged in human sacrifice, but many of these were sensational things. Many storytellers tell, for example, you also in your house would tell an exaggerated story. Maybe you on the football field scored 1 goal, but you'd go home and say that you scored 3 goals to be a hero in your own eyes and in your siblings' eyes, brothers and sisters' eyes. So exaggeration has been a human quality for long, and especially in stories things are exaggerated. So what I want to tell you, children, is that not everything that is told as a story is to be believed. We should use our own rational minds to understand that. So anyway, in the story there are savages who have brought other prisoners to sacrifice and devour, which is to eat. But one man escapes. So Robinson Crusoe shoots some of them with his gun, and he also kills some of them, and one man escapes, and then there's just the 2 of them on the island. So there are movies which made about Robinson Crusoe, which you can see. There's also an animation movie. There's also movies starring Pierce Brosnan, who's also acted as James Bond. So there is a lot of back and forth between them. There is a lot of mistrust between them initially, that one of them could kill the other. The tribal man is also suspicious. Robinson is also suspicious. But eventually they understand there's only the 2 of them and they need each other. And so without knowing each other's language, they eventually become friends.
Okay.
But they do not become friends because Robinson has the mindset of slave ownership. He has been on the ship, he has bought slaves, he has been a slave. So he decides to make Friday his slave.
Okay.
And which is what we have to understand, how for 300 years, 400 years, this was the European mentality, to make slaves out of other civilizations. So the man who he encounters is very good at hunting. He's able to shoot at birds or bats, and so he's because he's lived in the forest all his life, he knows how to get his food. So he's skilled in his own ways, just that he's not a part of civilization as Robinson wants him to be. So he decides to make him his slave and names him Friday.
Okay.
Because Friday is the day on which he saved him. And slowly, by interaction, Friday learns English word by word. He tells him Master Friday, so he calls himself Master, and tells him the names of fruits, food, trees, etc., and so on and so forth. But what is to be marked is that it does not go the other way around. He does not learn the tribal language. The tribal learns English. So there is a power dynamic in between, who learns what. He should also have learnt the tribal language, and which is what we should do when we are in any interaction. We should learn as much as the other person should learn. So anyway, due to lack of time, we wouldn't go into the story in great detail, but just that there are several other encounters of this kind. There are other European sailors who come to the island, there are pirates, and eventually it is with a group of pirates that Robinson Crusoe returns home after 27 long years.
Okay, so we can say pirates saves him from that particular island?
Yeah, pirates save him and he goes back to England. But after he goes back, for 27 years he has lived alone. He does not know, now he doesn't like people. So he wants to go back to the island, but when he goes back, the Spanish people have taken over the island. That's how the story ends. So it's a brilliant adventure story, and it's written in a very simple language. So apart from these 3 pages which you have in your textbook, you should actually go out and read this entire book. And it's a great thing to do because you're reading a 300-year-old book in English.
So here I need to ask you one question. Like, it's definitely no wonder, it's indeed a brilliant story. But through this particular story, it has interdisciplinary approach. So in this particular story,
Absolutely.
we learn about Robinson Crusoe. Not only about Robinson Crusoe, about the voyages and the history and the Europeans and the colonies, all the atmosphere at that particular time.
We understand a lot of history and geography, and also psychology of human mind and sociology.
Right.
So these are disciplines that you will be introduced to later in your later classes, but definitely history and geography is something that combine with this. And this is how, while we are reading a story, we should be curious about understanding other things, where these places were, what is the history, what is the meaning of a slave, what is human sacrifice, is it real, not real, and one should be curious while reading these stories what happened.
So here let me tell you that, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, we have almost 3 minutes left for this session, sir.
Sure. Alright, so there's some very interesting things. You may have heard of the term Man Friday. This comes directly from this novel. Now it is a phrase, it's a term.
Okay.
So Man Friday means somebody who is loyal and also skilled. Like Friday in the novel, like I said, he was very skilled, he knows how to hunt, he's very able-bodied. But he's found on Friday, so Robinson Crusoe calls him Friday. So Man Friday is somebody who's loyal and also very skillful. We've also seen things about slavery earlier on, and slavery is as old as humanity itself. Even in the old Mesopotamian civilization there was slavery, but modern slavery in the recent times was started by the Dutch, who transported around 500,000 slaves between 1596 and 1829. So Dutch are the people from Netherlands, the capital of which is Amsterdam. And this alone, the other slave owners were the Spanish people, British, French, Germans. All the Western European countries as we know it today indulged in slavery for a very long period of time. And I'll tell you one very interesting story before we end, or a couple of interesting stories actually, how all this started. The Dutch story, the story of Netherlands. Amsterdam is below sea level, so it gets flooded all the time.
Okay.
So how did they solve this problem? There are windmills, as you would know, across Europe. You would have seen windmills, those big instruments which run in the wind and they generate electricity. So electricity is a much later story. Initially the windmills were used, they attached, they were used to pound wheat to make flour. The wind would move and they would attach a stone to it and that would pound the wheat. Then they discovered that if they could put a blade onto the machine, it could cut wood. And once they started cutting wood, they could make ships. And they used the windmill by putting blades to lift the water.
Okay.
By lifting water, they channelized them in canals. So you see, if you see Amsterdam from above, which is also a task, Google Amsterdam aerial view, you will see that it's concentric circles of canals. Because the water was lifted by windmills, and so they solved this problem through scientific ingenuity.
Okay.
So they built ships and started sailing, and that is how this entire slave trade started, because they were able to sail to Africa and so on and so forth. Another term that comes in the novel and the story is cannibalism, which is the practice of humans eating humans. Now most of this is a lie. A lot of European literature of the 17th and 18th century says that there was cannibalism, but there was actually no cannibalism in the world. The only cannibalism that is actually known is when ships got wrecked, people ran out of food to have and then fought with each other, killed each other and ate each other sometimes also. And eventually I want to draw your attention to the name. Lots of old novels have names which denote what is going to happen. So Crusoe is something which is very close to words like cruise or crusade, and the word cruise means to sail to and fro from place to place, and the word originated in the 1650s. Now we also attach it with cars, because cars which can sail smoothly on the road, so there's cruise control and all of that. So anyway, there's a lot to talk about Robinson Crusoe and this novel, but we have run out of time, so I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. As we are running very short of time right now, dear learners and viewers, we have to wrap up this session here only. But let me thank our expert. Thank you so very much, Amit sir, for being with us, not only for this particular and brilliant story, for your interesting facts as well. And I'm quite sure this session will be beneficial for all our learners and viewers out there. And before I wrap up this session, let me share some very important information about NCERT textbooks. NCERT textbooks for the year 2023-24 are available throughout the country, and these textbooks may be purchased directly from NCERT sales counters located at New Delhi, Ahmedabad, Bengaluru, Kolkata and Guwahati, and these sales counters will be functional all the weekdays, included all the gazetted holidays, Saturdays and Sundays as well, from 9:30 AM to 6 PM. You may also place order for the books online from our website, that is ncertbooks.ncert.gov.in, and these books will be delivered at your doorsteps with no delivery fees. And in case if you want the soft copy of all those books in PDF version, it can also be downloaded online for free from NCERT, Diksha, e-Pathshala website and from our mobile app as well. Please visit our website ncert.nic.in to know more about the authorized vendors. With that note, me Renu Bhatt is taking your leave, but stay tuned to eVidya channels and NCERT official YouTube channel for more informative program. Our next session is for 5th standard Hindi students, and the topic that would be is Faslo Ke Tyauhar. So me Renu Bhatt is taking your leave. Namaskar.